Hello and welcome to the 29th installment of my grading of all of the base game cards. If you want insight into the grading system, check out the description, or click on the link in the top right hand corner to get to the first video, where I explain it all. But let's get started. The first card of today's video is another reason for why I always say that space events have a million discounts. And this one is probably the best one out there, Optimal Aerobreaking. If you're trying to go for a rush strategy, this card is probably one of the best 3 to have on your opening hand. Not only does it almost repay in terms of MC after 3 space events, but it will have also granted you an extra heat bump. This makes every space event so much better and can help end the game much faster. To add to this, out of the 17 space events in the base game, only 1 is really bad. 2 are good early game production cards and the rest are really solid or straight up top tier. Of course, optimal aerobreaking is best if combined with more discounts and some titanium prod. In an optimal scenario, you'd love to get some card draw with it, since your opponents will know how impactful it is and try to deny you any space events in the draft. But even without card draw, this just makes drafting a nightmare scenario for them, and they might have to let some really good cards go. Lastly, optimal aerobreaking can allow you to stay competitive on a Thermalist even if you're behind in heat prod all game. And it's one of the only cards that can swing it late game and still be a sensible play outside of just swinging that award. All in all, optimal aerobreaking is a less flexible but stronger version of Media Group, specifically catered towards a rush playstyle. In my opinion, it's an A tier card. We already talked about Ironworks a few episodes back, and Ore Processor is just a slightly different version of it. Oxygen bumpers were really popular online a few years ago, but have fallen out of favor a bit. Why? Well, you take energy, which could be used as heat to increase the temperature, to increase oxygen instead. Of course, the conversion rate is much better, but for that you have to pay for the card. In addition, increasing oxygen like this forgoes the insane point potential of a plant strategy. Of course, there are situations where oxygen bumpers are really beneficial. For example, if you want to deny someone that potential. For example, an Ecoline player. Or let's say you have a lot of heat prod and space events to increase the temperature and place oceans, but you just don't find the right plant prod cards to also rush up the oxygen track. So oxygen bumpers are definitely not useless. They have their niche that they fulfill much better than a comparable card like Regolith Eaters, for example. But in total, I'll of course place Ore Processor in the same tier as Ironworks, the C tier. Next up, we get to Permafrost Extraction. It's very similar to Ice Cap Melting and Subterranean Reservoir. While Subterranean Reservoir is the most expensive one, it's also the easiest to play, since it has no requirement. On the other hand, Ice Cap Melting is the cheapest of the 3, but also has the highest global requirement, meaning that sometimes all oceans are placed before its requirement is met, rendering the card useless. Permafrost Extraction is a nice middle ground. It's cheap, but almost never unplayable, and that's what I like about it. It's a very simple card that can help you in the rush strategy, since it's one of the cheapest ways to get an ocean down. You can extend your ocean walk with it, or use it to reach 6 oceans for kelp farming. As an event card, it can of course be improved by Media Group. A small downside compared to Subterranean Reservoir, you can't play it really early on for a card like Nitrophilic Moss. Still, I think it's a solid card that I always like to see in the draft and deserves a B tier placement in my opinion. The second to last card in today's video is Peroxide Power, a solid power production card. Let's compare it to Geothermal Power, which grants the same amount of power prod. It costs 4 MC more, but does not lower your MC prod. This of course means that if you ever need power prod really late in the game, for example to play a city card, then Peroxide Power is straight up better than Geothermal. It's just cheaper in total. But it can also be better than Geothermal early on. Let's say it's Gen 1 and you have 32 MC. You could play Peroxide and Strip Mine, but you couldn't do that with Geothermal. So you'd lose a full turn of Strip Mine production, amounting to 9 MC in total. That's delaying the break-even point of Geothermal in comparison to Peroxide by 9 gens. In addition to the 4 gens due to the price difference, this means that Peroxide is just better than Geothermal in this situation, period. Of course, this is probably the best case scenario for Peroxide early on, but it holds in general. If Peroxide Power allows you to play a power-hungry card one gen sooner, it makes it better in relation to Geothermal Power by a bit. In total, I still think Peroxide and Geothermal are around the same power level though. For each situation where Peroxide is better because it allows you to play a card a gen earlier, there is a situation where this does not apply and it is just more costly in the long run. So Peroxide does land in C tier, where I have placed Geothermal as well. And lastly, we have to talk about pets. There are a few cards with similar mechanics as pets. Immigrant City and Rover Construction grant MC prot or flat MC whenever a city is played, and Arctic Algae grants plants when an ocean is played. What do all of these cards have in common? To get the most out of them, you want to play them as early as possible, before any of the actions that trigger them have been taken. But because they mostly don't do anything on their own, you also want to play them as late as possible, so that you can use that money on production cards instead. This creates an interesting conundrum. Do I suffer the burden of this investment now, or do I delay the card another gen and risk someone placing a city or ocean and this card losing in value? For some cards this question is easy to answer. Arctic Algae is so strong you always play it as soon as you get it. Pets on the other hand, well, if you have the money left over, you can certainly play it early, but there are many cards I'd play over pets in the early game. And in addition to that, cities are just not that commonly placed early on. There are various other factors about pets, of course. It's a great card for ecologist, diversifier, or eccentric. It can be made cheaper by Earth Office, and is of course great for Point Luna. But in total, Pets is just a C tier card for me. I will play it early on if I'm playing a rich corp, and I'll delay it to the mid game or do not pick it up if I'm poor or going for a rush. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments whether you agree with my ratings, or if not, how you would have rated them differently. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. It really helps me out. And lastly, please check out my Twitch and my Twitter. See you in the next video.